Welcome, everybody, to episode 19 of the Triathlon Preview Show. We're back again.
Hey, everybody.
So this weekend, we got some good events for you. We're also trying something out for Fantasy Triathlon. It's free this weekend, again, as always. But it's going to be kind of a play-around event, so test out some lineups, get your strategy nailed down for all the bigger contests coming later in the year.
Yeah, we're starting to get into the meat of the season. Like after Easter, it's pretty much full on every weekend. You got Oceanside and South Africa on the Gold Coast. So there's a lot of big events coming up. So now's the time to experiment, take some chances, so then you can win some good prizes in April and May.
Yeah, also this episode and also Fantasy Triathlon is sponsored by the Rudy Project. So go online and use the code TRYPREVIEW for 40% off.
Yep. And Zach, you had a little camp this weekend in the Woodlands, right, with TRS Racing?
Yeah, TRS Racing came to the Woodlands, and we had a little 8 person camp. We did everything we could. We checked out a new swim place that I actually had never been to, just opened up. So I know actually a couple camps. Brandon Marsh and his camper is going to that same pool later I think this weekend, actually. So it's a nice little camp, 4-lane pool.
Oh, that's awesome. And, especially with the, Ironman Texas happening there, that's more options for people to swim when they're in town.
Yeah, and then you went to a camp in Arizona, right?
Yeah, I did the Hillary Biscay Smash camp. I was a coach, and it was, as you can expect with Hillary, it was a lot of training. But we had a good group of athletes. I took a little tumble on the Star Pass trails. If you've ever been on them, they're very rocky desert trails. And I hit the deck, but just a little scraped up and some bruised toes, and I was fine. But I was just got done saying to the campers, you usually fall towards the end of the run when you get fatigued. And then I fell 15 minutes into the run before we were fatigued. So it was karma.
Yep. Well, that's how it always works out. And I got my ass handed to me by a dark mark on the bike. So it's all good.
Yeah. Well, he's been training with Jess a lot. So he's in good shape now.
Yeah. So I blame her.
Yes.
All right, so let's move on to what everybody wants to know is the Ironman races this weekend. We actually have two very interesting start lists for both the races. So we'll start with Ironman 70.3 Monterrey down in Mexico. Give us a little information on the course, because I know this is definitely an interesting course.
Yeah, so the swim is in a canal. I mean, Ironman Texas kind of goes through a canal eventually, doesn't it?
Yes, but this is a completely different canal. I mean, our canal is dirty water, non-moving shit. Monterrey, Mexico canal is like 100% clear water, like a concrete bottom or something.
Yeah, and I think you can stand on the bottom. It doesn't look very wide. So, with a bigger pro list, that could kind of play into it. Like there might be a little more contact at the beginning of the swim. Last year, it was cold enough that there was a wetsuit swim for the pros. And I believe it was a wetsuit swim. I'm pretty sure. And I know that it's supposed to rain again this year and be cold. We'll talk about that later because that has some impact on the bike course. But so it's going to be wetsuit or non-wetsuit. And it's point to point as well.
Yeah, and if I remember correctly, I remember some of the guys saying that like you just let the front pack go and you were literally just carried along. Like you were just, it was just the current was so moving that you were just carried along. And I saw pictures definitely of age groupers just standing up in the middle and just walking the course. So, I mean, it's definitely not deep.
Okay. So it's not a course for swimmers to capitalize on their strength, it sounds like.
No, I mean, let's see here. It looks like the swim was like 23 minutes last year. So not terribly fast, but definitely fast.
Yeah. And then the bike is 2 laps out and back, flat. The thing there is, though, there's 4 kilometers of kind of cobbles. And there's a YouTube video. I'll put a link to it in the show notes that Kevin Collington actually put on his Twitter today. But a lot of people, it's at the turnaround, near the turnaround, and a lot of people were skidding out. They were apparently like ice. So that could play a part. I know last year, like Jordan Rapp crashed and DNF'd. So if it's slick again, that could definitely, it might, some people might, crash out. And then the run is 2 laps and flat and fast as well.
Yes, just one more. It's only 5 feet deep. That's the depth of their thing.
Oh, yeah. So that's like even kind of like the Vineman swim, but the Vineman swim is only shallow in like one little spot. Like this is the whole way.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, that's weird. But walking it would be a waste of energy because you'd be pushing so much water. So, but I guess it'd be easy to stand up and take a rest if you need it. So that's good.
All right. Well, like I said, looking at the start list is definitely not lacking on, professionals that are racing. And I think you said this race was a P750 race.
Yeah, it's a P750. So it's drawing a pretty good, and I think a lot of people are just getting ready. There's a Oceanside is in 2 weeks. There's also the Brazil race. That's a P1500 race. It's one of the regional championships down on April 10th. So people might be trying to kind of dial things in and get one race under their belts before they do kind of a bigger time race. And then, people like Ben Hoffman, Ben Collins, they've been like, they just did Buenos Aires a couple weeks ago, and they had a really good battle. Hoffman was second, and then Ben Collins was third in Buenos Aires behind Sam Appleton, and it was really close between the three of them. So some people are definitely fit. And then, as we have people like Cody Beals, his first race, he had a crap race in Panama, so he's going to want to do better. Kevin Collington is back. He was second last year, so he didn't crash on the cobbles last year. So, yeah, there's a big group. I mean, it'll be interesting because it's the start of the season, so you don't know exactly where everyone's at.
Yeah, I mean, there's also, you definitely got like Tim Don, and you got some, the more been on the circuit a long time, like Wortel or Chris McDonald's there. So you got some guys that have been around a long time too.
Yeah, and Tim Don won last year, and then you have Richie Cunningham. He's been racing for a long time, and then number 2, that Serrano guy. Do you remember in the Cabo San Lucas race when everybody was a little bit fired up on Twitter because he won there and people were saying have drafted his way up and then won? Remember
he was something like he came out in the second pack of the swim, and they said he just drafted the whole way, and then he had fresh legs and just basically ran his way. Yeah,
exactly. It wasn't like,
is that what you said, right?
Yeah, Los Cabos, right? Wasn't Cody Beals was there, I believe, and Giardini.
Giardini was the one
Yeah. So that'll be interesting to see. I mean, this bike, it's flat, so you're not going to get like a lot of separation. The one thing that could separate you is like they go flying into the cobbles and people start crashing out or something like that. I mean, they're going to have to be careful. And honestly, like for someone like Trevor Wortel, he doesn't like cold. It's not like his greatest strength. So he's going to have to do some things warm. There's also, Drew Scott, who just started working with Purple Patch. So he left. He's not working with his dad anymore. He's kind of doing a new system. So we'll see what kind of effect that has on his racing as well.
Yeah, that'll be actually interesting because he actually had some really good races, and I felt like he fell off a little bit, or just maybe, he had more competition or whatever it was. So I think that move could have been maybe a good thing, hopefully.
Yeah, and I think, he's definitely a really good swimmer and cyclist, but his run he was fading on runs. So maybe he just needed a different mix in his program or just something new to kind of give him some confidence. He was out in Kona training with Kevin Collington, who's also with Purple Patch, and Sam Appleton. they had a Kona camp. So I'm sure he's definitely fit. I don't know if he's like, super fast quite yet. It's early season. He's ready to go and kind of wants to do his new training justice, so to
Yeah, I mean,
speak.
I know he was, he started doing a couple Ironmans and he basically hasn't had a good Ironman. So maybe he's refocused on the 70.3 distance this year. I'm not too sure, or maybe this is leading up to an Ironman. But I guess we'll find out later in the season where his end goal is for this season.
Yeah, I mean, gosh, what is he? He's like 24, 5. Like, there's no rush to do an Ironman, right? Like, you have so much time to build that base and be fast. Another person that Stuart Hayes is someone to look out for of Great Britain. I was just looking at his Twitter. I believe he was training in the Canary Islands and everything with Michelle Dillon. She's an Australian. She was an ITU gal and now has a squad. So he'll be fit and ready to go. And Matt Hansen, you told me, is not racing.
Yeah, Matt Hansen's not racing. So one thing he did, kind of not told me, but basically he emailed the race director or whatever and said, "Hey, I'm not racing." So there might be other people that are on the list that we don't know about that will not be racing. So definitely be watching out to see who doesn't start. Maybe check some Twitters and stuff like that.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I've heard of that before. We'll start talking about the women, but I can say for the women, I know that Carly Johan is not starting, and then Tyne Deckers is in Puerto Rico because she was on both lists. So,
all right, well, let's finish the males. So how do you think this race is going to play out? Who are we looking to get out of the water in that top group?
I mean, you're going to have number 11, Sudri. He's a good swimmer. I think you'll have Ben Collins, Matt Sharbat, Tim Don, Kevin Collington. I think Drew Scott. Those will probably, and then Ben Hoffman. If he has a really good swim, he might get in there. If not, he'll be kind of second pack, and I think they'll be too terribly far behind. That would probably be Beals, McDonald, Cunningham. Richie sometimes is like the back part of the first pack or second pack, so it just depends. Stuart Hayes, he was ITU guy, so he's got a pretty good swim as well. I think it'll be pretty close, and then it'll probably come down to the run and who doesn't fall on the cobbles. I definitely think if it rains like they say it is and it's slick on the cobbles, a couple people might hit the deck. I don't know if it means that they'll DNF, but they might lose the group if they skid out a little bit.
So any
know. Who do you
picks for
think's
the
gonna
win?
win?
Oh, the wins for me. I think it's going to be a 2-man battle, actually. I think it's going to be Beals and Don for the fight on the run is what I'm thinking.
Oh, really?
Yeah, that's I think it's going to be Beals and Don fighting it out.
Matt Sharbat just signed with Ventum. And actually, there's a lot of guys on Ventum. You got Sharbat, you got Beals, you got Collington. It's like the battle of the Ventums. Kevin got second here last year, so don't count him out. And in similar weather, I think Matt Sharbat was probably pretty pissy after Panama. So I think he'll be racing with a chip on his shoulder. And Ben Hoffman has been doing really, really well. So I don't know. And Ben Collins, but how many good ones can you have in a row?
It's definitely it's definitely deep. I mean, there's like you said at the beginning, it's going to depend if people are coming into this race fit or if they're using this as a race to get fit for maybe a regional championship or an Ironman or Oceanside, something like that. So that's, I think, might be the bigger question that we don't know.
Yeah, because they're not going to put that out there. Yeah, Ben Hoffman seems to be fit, so I think he'll be up there, and I think Matt Sharbat will be up there as well. So,
all right, well, we're going to go with two different people there, so we'll see how it works out.
Hopefully one of us is right.
Yeah, I'd like to actually say last episode, you had some very good picks for the weekend of IT racing and Ironman New Zealand.
Yes, I hit that one pretty good. So if it works out the way it should, I'm really wrong this weekend.
All right. Well, let's talk about the females because I mean, this one might maybe not as deep, but definitely the top contenders are there. With Magali, Carfrey, Wartell, the female Wartell. You got Liz Lyles, like you said, Deckers is not racing here.
Yeah. I mean, you got Sarah Pampiano was second here last year. You have Camilla Peterson, who, has been very dominant in 70.3s, kind of over in Europe. We don't see her racing in North America that much. So makes me think she's coming over here to do some early season racing, maybe an Ironman. Totally speculating there. You also have, and people probably might not one, but number 45, Emma Pallant. She was third at the Noosa Triathlon in November, just behind Ashley Gentle and Charlotte McShane. I looked at her Twitter. She recently ran a 5K in 16:34, which is pretty darn quick. And she also is the world duathlon champion. So she might be out of the water behind, but could be coming up quickly. And it looks like she's been training really hard and she's in really good shape. She's been training with Stuart Hayes, actually, and Michelle Dillon over in the Canary Islands and Europe. So she's someone I think that could be a dark horse that you'd look over at.
Yeah, I mean, we also have Emma Kate Lidbury, and then Kirsty John. I mean, she had a pretty fast run in Panama. She ran her way into fourth. So, look out for her too coming back. Definitely going to be behind in the swim, but.
Yeah. The one advantage she doesn't have going for her that she had in Panama is, I think due to the weather, you're not going to have as many blowups on the run as you did in Panama. Not that she ran really fast, but I don't think the carnage will be as bad here. Although there could be carnage, say, on slick. So I think that'll be the one thing. Like if people have minutes on her off the bike, there's going to be less of a spread, as far as like people dying on the run. I think people run relatively well. You're not going to have people, losing 8 minutes because they fall apart in the heat. I get what I'm saying.
Yeah. No, the thing about the weather too. I mean, I'm not that far away here in Texas, and the weather does change pretty fast. So I mean, it does, even though it might say rain on Sunday right now, if it says 80 degrees on Monday, it could easily be 80 degrees on Sunday, and the bad weather be there earlier. So the course could be wet the night before or Friday, but it might not be wet Sunday morning. So I guess the weather could change in a heartbeat, but right now I think it is, like you said, supposed to rain.
Right. And it looks like, if you look at the weather, it looks like it's kind of a front coming through. So that tells me that it might also be really windy. So that could break things up on the bike. And someone like Heather Wortell, she's just got more power than everyone because she's tall, she's strong, and she weighs a bit more. I don't mean that in a bad way. She's taller. She weighs more. So she's just got more power than everybody. She can just ride. A flat course is good for her. She's pretty aerodynamic. I mean, she definitely is strong in the hills too, but her versus say Kirsty John, like she's got a lot more watts. So I think there'll be a bigger spread as far as, versus like in Panama, like, Heather can definitely ride away probably from Marinda, on this type of course.
So we just heard that Wortell is fat and she's going to ride away from Carfrey.
No, Wortell is lean and tall and very strong, and she'll do well. She cycles very well. That's what I'm saying. I'm just saying, like on a flat course, you know what I'm saying?
I know.
Watts are king.
Yes. Watts are king on a flat course. Heather's going to ride away from everybody. And then the question is, who's going to run her down?
Heather can run too. Like she can run 120 to 122. I mean, Magali won this race last year, I think in 410, something like that. So yeah. Oh no, 4 hours. I'm sorry. Magali won by 11 minutes last year over Sarah Pompiano. She rode a 212 and ran a 120. So it was a fast course, and that's a fast time.
So my
So
question is, especially for the women, from what I'm remembering correctly, the water just pulls you along. So like Wortel and Magali might not be behind at all coming out of the water, depending on especially how far they start behind the men. I mean, it could be, everybody could be just pulled down the stream.
yeah, and I think probably your strongest swimmer is going to be Camilla Peterson, and maybe Karen Thibodeau, if she has a good swim, can hang with Camilla. But then I think you're going to have a group, like Magali, Heather, Miranda, Liz Lyles, Emma Kate. Emma Kate might be able to stay with Peterson if she has a good swim, but then you're going to have that group, and they're not going to be too far down. So it could come together. Sarah Pompiano is probably going to have to chase a bit on the bike.
Yeah, I mean, for comparison, like Magali swam a 25:30, and then Sarah swam a 30:30 last year here.
Yeah. Yeah. And Magali actually rode faster than Sarah, but I think Sarah might be stronger this year. At the end of 2014, Sarah was coming back from a stress fracture in her femur. And then this year, she's finished a season where she got seventh at Kona and then won her first Ironman. So she's another year stronger. So I see her bike as a bigger weapon this year. I think she's probably a little bit fitter and stronger.
So professional women, or men and women, women are starting 5 minutes behind the men at this race.
Oh, that's great. So there shouldn't be any overlap.
Yeah, shouldn't be too bad.
That's huge. No. And it's not like the men's field is huge. There's only 25 guys. I'm sure the second loop of the bike is going to get crowded with the ages. And that'll be another thing with the cobblestones, is that the age groupers are going to be starting and the pros are going to be doing a youth. So that could be, people are just going to have to be careful on that part. So,
all right. So who's going to win?
I believe Heather Wortel will win. I think Magali will be second. And I think Camilla Peterson will be third.
So I'm going to flip-flop the two Canadians. I think Magali is going to be first and Heather's going to be second. Third, I don't know. I think it could be a shootout between Carfrey or Lyles. Sarah, whoever. Yeah. I think
Liz Lyles. Yeah. Liz Lyles didn't have a very good Panama, so she's probably a little bit motivated. Came back from there and was like, okay, well, that's not going to fly. So, and the colder weather, she's coming from Reno, so it's been a little older, but she's just got to be careful. She's someone who gets cold when she's cycling. So she might need to put on an extra something.
All right, well, let's move over to the other race then. We got Puerto Rico, 70.3 Puerto Rico. Definitely an interesting race last year.
It will be hot.
Yeah, where it definitely will be hot.
It will be hot in Puerto Rico.
So course-wise, what do we have here besides fire ants?
Fire ants and shootings. So the swim is in a lagoon first, and then I did this for 2011, the inaugural year. So you do like a kind of a little loop in the lagoon, and then you cut across under a bridge and then into, more of the ocean, I would say. And then you get out and you have like a 400-meter run to transition. The bike is out along a highway and then you're just on a road that's right along the coast, so it can be very windy. And it's out 2 loops and then back. It's not technical at all. It's flat. You have to look out for giant iguanas. I'm not kidding. And it's very hot. And then the second loop will get crowded because you'll have age groupers kind of merging in. The run is 2 loops. It's a false flat up to this really steep climb. You go into kind of Old Town San Juan. It's beautiful. And then you go up this steep climb, and then you're kind of running along, and then you go down, and then you run along this fort, along this wall, and it's just baking hot. And then you come back the way you came. Its run is really, really brutal. That's all I have to say. And there'll be carnage on it for sure.
All right. Well, carnage. Okay. Well, the start list, you said P500 race. So less points, but the start list is definitely not lacking. Definitely some decent top names there.
Yeah. I mean, they probably had to kind of get some people to come in. You have Starkowitz, who's won here a couple times. And then if anybody listened to Andrew Starkowitz's last interview with TRS on TRS radio, he definitely, I think he called Tim O'Donnell Captain America. So they're going to be racing each other, which is interesting. I asked Tim if he was excited about racing him after the interview, and he told me that he didn't listen to the interview, but I'm sure he heard about it. And then you have Frederick Van Leerd. I think he's going to be there. His website says that it's on the schedule. So he's coming over, I guess, from Europe to race in Puerto Rico. You have Romain Guillaume, Leon Griffin, Cam Dye, who will want to light up the bike course. So, I mean, it's just very interesting. Chris Lefferman was second last year. Your returning champion, or he's not returning, is Amarelli, is not coming back. He won last year.
Yeah, I mean,
Thoughts?
I would say the start list is not as deep as the other race, but definitely some big names. I think you'll definitely see Dye try to go off the front with Starkowitz, and then Dye usually tries to hang on for dear life in the run, just like Starkowitz does. So
yeah.
And then if you can see somebody like Freddie or Tim run them down.
Yeah, and I mean, Tim O'Donnell showed he had some pretty good bike skills in Kona. I'm sure Starkowitz wants to show him that he doesn't have good bike skills. So, I don't think Cam Dye can hang with Starkowitz the whole bike. And I mean, for someone hanging on in the run, sometimes Starkey pulls off an awesome run like that you don't expect. I mean, he's run like 117.
No,
I think
you're right.
Didn't he and Tim O'Donnell like in Eagleman a couple years ago? Wasn't it like right down to the wire? And I think Starkey might have won, or maybe it was like know. Yeah, that happened a couple years ago. I feel like that I'm starting a rivalry here. And then Tim O'Donnell like got close to Starkey's. Tim O'Donnell was the second American under 8 hours. And Starkey didn't like that so much,
So basically you're just saying there's a rivalry and they need to settle it this weekend.
Yes, it would be even better if we could get Andy Potts to show up too, because then it'd be like 3 of them,
Well, we could just throw Ben Hoffman in there too.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
So one thing that I'm remembering from last year, so Leon Griffin, he actually started last year off really nice. I think he actually had like a lot of wins back to back or seconds and podiums, and he kind of fell off at the end of the year. And I know he didn't have a good 70.3 worlds. So I'm interested to see how he's going to come back this year at the beginning of the year and see how he does.
He did well, remember, at the Island House Triathlon at the end of last year. So it might be he's kind of like on an upswing. But he did start out with a couple wins down in the southern hemisphere, and then it's kind of flat throughout the rest of the year. Had a good island house showing, and then we'll see kind of where he's at now. I think. I mean, I think he had a baby last year, so maybe it was kind of like a adjustment period. Maybe that's what I'm thinking. I don't know. We'll find out. I mean, he's definitely strong, I mean, if he's on, like, he's going to be at the front in the swim, and, he'll be with Dye and Starkey. I just don't know if he has the firepower to ride with those guys.
So how do you see the male race playing out, and what about the win? Who's going to be there?
I think if T.O.'s in good shape, I think he's got a little bit of time to make up off the bike. I definitely think he can do it. But I think running Starkey down, like if he's got a lead and it's not going too badly, I mean, he can dig his heels in and hang on. So I see it as a battle between those two. I think Dye will be in the mix for a little bit, and I see him falling off. Frederick Van Leerd, I just don't know. I mean, if he's doing Ironman South Africa, I think he's the defending champion. He's probably in pretty good form. So, I mean, he could definitely play a part. I just don't know. 70.3, it seems like he's been more focused on Ironman, so he might be slower, maybe. I don't want to say slower, but you know what I mean?
Yeah, no, I know exactly what you mean. I was going to say the same thing, that he just doesn't seem he has that extra gear that you need in a 70.3. And this could just be a hard training day for him for build up to South Africa.
Yeah, that's kind of what I see. And, he might be going, WTC might, want him there to kind of promote the race and things like that. So it might just be a good hit out before Ironman South Africa, if that's what he's doing. I haven't seen the South Africa list.
Yeah, I think it's going to be Starkey versus Dye, whoever can hold on the longest on the run. I think Dye could probably be a little behind, maybe off the bike. I think Starkey will probably hit it the last little 10 miles, maybe. Dye might fall a little behind. I just think it'll be those two, one of those two fighting it out.
You think T.O. won't run Dye down?
I think it depends how Dye wants to play the race. I know last year was his first year at 70.3, and every time we talked, he was always learning the nutrition about the whole race. And so I think, Starkey's going to go off the front if he doesn't go off at the beginning, he's going to go off the last 10 miles and leave whoever behind. So the question is, does Dye put in that extra gear then, or does he try to save a little? Does he try to save a little for the run and see if he can keep off, Donald or Starkey or whoever?
I don't think Dye can actually ride with Starkey the whole time. I think he'll fall off. I think Starkey will blow that bike course apart if he's feeling good. And the thing is with Starkey, like if he's feeling good, like he's going to hit the bike course. If he's feeling shitty, like it's going to be a crap ride. So, you'll know about 10 miles into the ride what kind of day he's having.
Yeah, very true. Yes. Yeah.
So, all right, women.
Yes, women. Still some decent people. Haskins and Corbin lead the list as right off the top.
Yeah, and Lindsay's coming back from her injury, but she did pretty well in Panama. She was 5th there. I think she probably better than she thought. So she's probably definitely, getting fit. She's thinking of maybe doing like a May, June Ironman, just depending on how things progress with her. Tyne Deckers is someone to look at, and then Jean Cologne, from France, cyclist and runner. So she'll be someone coming from behind. And if people start fading in the heat on the run, she could kind of make some moves. I just think Sarah Haskins is pretty hard to beat. I think she's undefeated in 70.3s. And she won this last year, and she'll just take out the bike and she'll be ahead on the swim. She's definitely the strongest swimmer. I think she'll be probably lead wire to wire and win. That's what I think.
I was going to say actually the same thing. I think Haskins will lead from the finish, from the start to finish. It doesn't look to be anybody that is going to be in the form that she's in, and even if she has a slightly off day, she's still better than everybody else.
And I mean, she's been training in Claremont too, so Claremont, Florida. So she at least has been in some heat and humidity all year. So I think that'll make a difference. I mean, you might see someone like Laura Wassner in the mix. She just raced Buenos Aires. It didn't go quite as she'd hoped. She was sixth there. She's probably your second best swimmer. I don't know if she can stay with Haskins. If it's just the two of them, I think she might need a bigger group to stay with. So those two might be out of the water in the lead, and then you'll just see some things kind of happen on the run or on the bike. A flat bike isn't the greatest for Laurel. She's an awesome climber, and there are definitely no hills on this bike course. So that's not great for her. So I think, I think it might be between like Lindsay and Jean Cologne and Tyne Deckers to the podium.
Yeah, and I mean, I don't want to say that Haskins, I think she will run away with it, but it doesn't mean a Corbin might not be able to give her some kind of push for her money. I mean, like you said, she is coming back, and she did have a decent showing at Panama with a pretty decent start list, so maybe she might be way better than that. So we could see her on an up climb.
Yeah, I mean, that's what should be happening with her. So, she might get a little bit closer for sure. I think Sarah's kind of got that power and that aerodynamics on the bike. So I think there'll be a bit of a gap, and she's going to be one of those people who you're not going to see her until the turnaround. So it's kind of like it's going out of sight, out of mind for at least the first, 20 miles before they make the turnaround at the far end. So you're not going to know. I mean, you're only going to know the gaps if someone tells you. So that's kind of tough, I think.
Yeah, I mean, you could get one gap out of T1, and then by the time you see her, that gap could be doubled, and you're like, oh shit, the race is gone now. She's too far out.
Right. And, she's so aerodynamically set up on her bike. Like that's just a huge advantage, especially if it gets a little windy. She'll just power right through that. So, I mean, she used to light up the bike in the Lifetime Fitness series, and she could ride like it was nobody's business. And I think she's starting to get the hang of the 70.3 rides, and I think she'll probably do pretty well.
Definitely be interesting later in the year when some of these 70.3 specialists all meet at one of the bigger races.
Yeah, I definitely think it'll be interesting because, I mean, Sarah has won some bigger races. She won Panama and stuff, but it's like I haven't seen her race Heather Ortel. I don't think she's raced Hella Fredrickson. I don't think she's raced Alicia Case, so I don't think she's raced Magali. Maybe, but Magali is kind of on an upswing now. So definitely something that I want to see. I don't think she's raced Meredith Kessler. So we'll see.
Yeah, I think the 70.3 distance for women especially is getting very competitive. Besides number one, it's definitely being very competitive, and it's actually a race that I'm more excited to see than Kona sometimes for the women.
Yeah, definitely. Especially if you get it on the right course where it's fair, I want to say. I think it's definitely, like I would say probably the World Championships this past year was a relatively fair course in that, you had to be a good cyclist. You had to be a good runner. Swim is a swim. But I think, yeah, it could very well be interesting. I don't know what the course is going to be like down in Australia for Worlds. I know they'll put some hills in. It'll be interesting, especially maybe with an ocean swim. If you get some waves, that could break some things up. So, yeah, I mean, we'll see. I mean, we'll probably get a taste of it at St. George. I think that'll be your first really big stacked field, and then Worlds after that in September.
Yes, definitely. Definitely some good information. I think you're right. I think St. George could be one of those first races we're going to see a lot of those, and maybe even Oceanside too, depending on how many people head out to Oceanside.
Yeah, that's, it's iffy. I mean, it's especially with that race in Brazil the week after. I'm wondering if people are going to opt to do that. And then you also have South Africa, who's going there. It'll be interesting when that Oceanside list comes up. I'm doing it. They sent out an email, but they didn't have, like, you couldn't see who else was on the email. So I wasn't able to like sneak a peek.
Yeah, you're right. There's a lot of races within that month. I mean, we're coming to that time of the year. There's a lot of races. You have your first regional championship Ironman. You have your first, I guess, second regional championship 70.3. And then you have St. George, and then you have Oceanside. You have a lot of big races in that area. And then Woodland, and
Right.
then
And
Texas. Yeah, I ran
yeah.
Texas only
And
a week
Texas is the
after.
week after, right? St.
Yeah,
George.
yeah, exactly. So they're all right there. The beginning of the year is definitely going to be an interesting year. Like every year, we're going to see where people are going to, how they stack up for the year.
Yeah. I mean, and you could see, I think maybe with St. George, with Texas being a week after, um, St. George might have a few less people. They lost that Ironman at the beginning of the year with Melbourne. They only have one regional championship before Texas and South Africa, versus last year they had Melbourne, and then they had South Africa, and then they had Texas. So I feel like South Africa and Texas get more stacked.
Yeah, I mean, no, you're right. Because if you went to Melbourne and you had a bad race, you had plenty of other opportunities to make it back. But now, if you go to South Africa and you have a bad race, by the time you're ready for another Ironman, I mean, you're cutting it close already. So you've lost a month or 2 months of your beginning of the season.
Yes, if people have bad races in South Africa, they're going to end up in Cairns, in June. So Texas, depending on like if they pull the plug or something. But yeah, it's going to be, I think it'll be people will be doing different things, and some people are going to want bigger money at like the Brazil race. And WTC is going to want good people at that race. So they're going to have good people there. So those people might not do Oceanside.
Yes. So we can't wait for the start list. And thank you, everybody, for listening.
Yep. Thanks, everybody.
Have a great weekend.